The morning mist clung to the trees as Park Jae-yun made her way through the dense forest of Jeju Island. Her woven basket swayed gently, filled with herbs she had gathered since dawn. As a traditional medicine practitioner, she knew every plant and root that grew in these woods. A strange light caught her eye through the trees. At first, she thought it was sunlight reflecting off morning dew, but the glow was too steady, too artificial. Moving closer, she found something that changed her life forever. A metallic vessel, its silver surface dulled by mud and fallen leaves. The object was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was roughly the size of a small car, but its shape was odd, like a teardrop made of metal. Steam rose from several cracks in its surface, and a faint humming sound came from within. Jae-yun approached carefully. She was not someone who scared easily, but her heart pounded as she touched the warm metal surface. To her surprise, a section of the vessel simply melted away at her touch, revealing the inside. The interior glowed with soft blue light. Lying on what looked like a curved bed was a being that made Jae-yun gasp. It looked almost human, but its skin had a slight purple tint, and its features were sharper, more angular. The being wore what seemed to be a dress made of flowing metal, now stained with a dark liquid that Jae-yun guessed was blood. The alien's eyes opened. They were silver, with no pupils. "Help," it said in a voice that somehow formed in Jae-yun's mind rather than her ears. Jae-yun's medical training took over. She checked the alien's wounds. There were several cuts and what looked like burns across its body. The blood was indeed purple, but it flowed just like human blood. That meant pressure would help stop the bleeding. Using clean leaves from her basket, Jae-yun made bandages. She applied a paste of yarrow and comfrey, herbs she knew would help stop bleeding and fight infection. The alien watched her work with those strange silver eyes. "I am Harl," the thought voice came again, weaker this time. "Queen of the Stellar Empire. My ship. Attacked. Emergency landing. Save your strength," Jae-yun said aloud, though she knew the alien probably couldn't understand her words. She continued treating the wounds, using everything she knew about traditional medicine. The queen's breathing was shallow. Jae-yun found what looked like burns on her chest. She pulled out some aloe vera she had collected earlier and carefully applied it to the burned areas. The queen's skin immediately began to look better. Hours passed as Jae-yun worked. She made tea from healing herbs, helping the queen drink it slowly. The strange thing was, despite all the differences between them, a body was still a body. The herbs worked on the alien queen just as they would on a human. As the sun began to set, Jae-yun knew she couldn't leave the queen alone. She gathered more herbs and started a small fire near the ship. The queen's breathing had steadied, and the bleeding had stopped. That night, as Jae-yun sat by the fire, she thought about how strange life was. This morning, she had been gathering herbs like any other day. Now she was treating an alien queen with plants that grew in her backyard. The queen stirred and opened her eyes again. This time they seemed clearer. "You are using primitive methods," the thought voice said. "But they work. How?" Jae-yun smiled and held up some of her herbs. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways," she said, knowing the queen would understand her meaning if not her words. "My people," the queen began, but Jae-yun shook her head. "Rest now," she said firmly. "Tomorrow is soon enough for worrying." The queen closed her eyes again, and Jae-yun settled in for a long night. She knew this was just the beginning of something much bigger than her small life on Jeju Island. But for now, she had a patient to care for, and that was enough. In the darkness, the ship's soft blue glow mixed with the orange firelight, creating strange shadows in the forest. Jae-yun added more wood to the fire and checked her patient's bandages one more time. The queen was sleeping peacefully now, her chest rising and falling steadily. Above them, the stars seemed to shine more brightly than usual. Jae-yun wondered if somewhere up there, people were looking for their queen. She hoped they would find them soon, but until then, she would do what she did best, Heal with the gifts nature had provided. Dawn broke over the forest as Jai-Yun woke from her light sleep. The alien queen was already awake, watching her with those silvery eyes. Jai-Yun noticed the queen trying to sit up and quickly moved to help her. "Careful," Jai-Yun said, even though she knew the queen couldn't understand Korean. She pointed to the bandages, then made a pained face, hoping to convey her meaning. The queen touched the leaves wrapped around her arm and projected a thought into Jai-Yun's mind. "These simple plants, they have stopped the pain." There was wonder in the mental voice. Jai-Yun picked up a stick and drew in the dirt. She sketched a simple plant, then drew an arrow pointing to the bandages on the queen's arm. Next to it, she drew a smiling face. The queen watched intently, then used her own stick to draw what looked like complex machines, followed by a sad face. "Our healing technology, damaged in crash," the queen's thoughts came through. "Never thought primitive methods could work so well." Jai-Yun smiled and opened her medicine bag. She pulled out a small jar of honey she had collected from wild bees. The queen watched curiously as Jai-Yun carefully removed the old bandages. The wounds were healing well, but they still needed care. Jai-Yun dipped her fingers in the honey and pointed to it, then to a nearby beehive high in a tree. The queen's eyes widened as Jai-Yun applied the honey to her wounds. Almost immediately, the queen's tense shoulders relaxed. "This substance, it soothes," the thought came. Jai-Yun nodded, then drew a bee in the dirt, followed by the honey jar, and finally a healing wound. She had learned that pictures worked better than words. Throughout the day, they developed their own language of drawings and gestures. Jai-Yun showed the queen different herbs, drawing their uses in the dirt. The queen, in turn, drew pictures of her world: tall spires that reached into the clouds, ships that sailed between stars. When Jai-Yun brought out some boiled pine needle tea, the queen initially hesitated. Jai-Yun drew a simple picture showing that it would help fight sickness. The queen took a careful sip, and her silver eyes brightened. "This is good," came the thought. "Different from our medicines. More real." As evening approached, the queen insisted on trying to walk. Jai-Yun helped her stand, supporting her weight. Together, they took slow steps around the crash site. The queen pointed to various plants, and Jai-Yun would either nod or shake her head to indicate if they were useful for medicine. They stopped by a stream where Jai-Yun had been getting fresh water. The queen dipped her hand in, then drew ripples in the dirt, followed by a question mark. Jai-Yun understood. She drew pictures showing how running water was cleaner than standing water. The queen's next thought came through clearer than before. "Your people, you understand things my people have forgotten. We rely so much on our machines, we've lost touch with the wisdom of nature." Jai-Yun wished she could explain how her grandmother had taught her these things, how knowledge had been passed down through generations. Instead, she drew a simple tree with many branches, then people learning from each other. The queen nodded slowly. "Knowledge grows like your trees," she projected. "We have been looking up so long, we forgot to look at the ground beneath us." As night fell again, Jai-Yun changed the bandages one last time, applying fresh honey and herbs. The wounds were healing faster than she had expected. Perhaps alien biology responded even better to natural remedies than human bodies did. The queen drew one final picture before sleeping. Two figures holding hands, one clearly meant to be human and one alien. Above them, she drew a beautiful spiral that Jai-Yun guessed represented the galaxy. The message was clear. Despite their differences, they had found a way to connect. Jai-Yun added her own drawing, a simple heart shape between the two figures. The queen smiled, and for the first time, Jai-Yun heard what sounded like a soft laugh in her mind. The morning peace shattered as a deep rumbling filled the air. Jai-Yun looked up to see three massive ships hovering above the forest canopy, each one bigger than any airplane she had ever seen. The queen grabbed Jai-Yun's hand and squeezed it gently. "My husband comes. The thought echoed in Jai-Yun's mind. Do not fear. A beam of light shot down from the largest ship, and within it appeared a tall figure. The alien king stood nearly 7 feet tall, his purple skin darker than the queen's, wearing armor that seemed to flow like liquid metal. His silver eyes blazed with an intensity that made Jai-Yun step back. My queen, his thoughts boomed in Jai-Yun's head. He strode forward, then stopped abruptly, staring at the leaves and herbs covering his wife's wounds. What is this? Primitive treatment. The queen sat up straighter. Husband, this human healed me when our technology could not. The king's face twisted in disbelief. He looked at Jai-Yun as if she were some strange insect. Using plants, like animals, we must get you to a proper medical facility immediately. Jai-Yun stood her ground, though her heart pounded. She pointed to the queen's nearly healed wounds, then to her collection of herbs. The king watched as she changed one of the bandages, revealing healthy purple skin beneath. Impossible, he projected. Our best doctors said you would die without advanced care. He turned to his guards, who had appeared behind him. Bring the medical team. A group of aliens in shimmering suits rushed forward with strange devices. They scanned the queen, and Jai-Yun watched their expressions change from professional concern to confusion. My king, one of them projected, her wounds. They're healing faster than our projections indicated possible. And there's no sign of infection. The queen touched one of the herbal patches. This human understands healing in ways we have forgotten. Watch. Jai-Yun knelt and began preparing a fresh poultice. She crushed herbs between smooth stones, added honey, and applied it to one of the queen's remaining wounds. The king leaned forward despite himself, watching as the angry purple color around the wound faded almost immediately. What is this substance? He demanded. Jai-Yun held up the honey jar and pointed to a nearby beehive. The medical team scanned the honey, their devices blinking rapidly. It contains natural antibacterial properties, one doctor projected, and compounds we've never seen before. The combination with these plants, it's remarkably effective. The king's expression shifted slightly. He watched as Jai-Yun taught the queen to wrap her own bandages, their gestures and drawings forming a simple but effective communication. You learned their primitive language? He asked his wife. No, the queen replied. We created our own. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones. Jai-Yun saw the king's shoulders relax slightly. He knelt down beside them, watching as Jai-Yun drew pictures explaining how different herbs work together. To her surprise, he picked up a stick and added his own drawings, asking questions about the treatment. Perhaps, he projected, more softly now, we have become too dependent on our machines. There is wisdom in these ancient ways. The queen smiled and took both their hands, her husband's and Jai-Yun's. Our peoples have much to teach each other. The king nodded slowly. Indeed. He turned to Jai-Yun and bowed slightly. You have saved my queen when our advanced civilization could not. We owe you a debt. Jai-Yun bowed back, then drew a simple picture in the dirt, different hands joining together, with plants and stars above them. The king studied it for a moment, then added his own mark, a crown, linking the hands together. Above them, the ships hummed quietly in the morning air, while below, human and alien sat together, sharing knowledge as old as the earth itself. The king's earlier disgust had vanished, replaced by something new: respect. The medical team continued their scans, documenting every herb and treatment Jai-Yun had used, while the forest around them carried on its ancient cycle of growth and healing, indifferent to the momentous meeting taking place beneath its canopy. The sky turned an eerie green as dark clouds gathered overhead. Jai-Yun recognized the signs of an approaching storm, but something felt different. The alien ships hovering above the forest began to flicker and drift. Our systems are failing, the king's thoughts came frantically. Some kind of magnetic disturbance. His flowing metal armor suddenly stiffened, becoming dead weight. The medical team's devices sparked and went dark. Jai Yun looked at the darkening sky and grabbed the queen's hand. She pointed to a cave she knew was nearby, one she often used when gathering herbs in bad weather. The king tried to activate his communication devices, but nothing worked. "We must trust her," the queen projected weakly, her own strength affected by the failing technology embedded in her healing wounds. Rain began to fall as Jai Yun led them through the forest. The alien guards struggled with their now useless armor, some having to abandon pieces along the way. The king helped carry his queen, his face tight with worry as her technological supports failed one by one. They reached the cave just as the storm hit full force. Lightning crashed nearby, and the aliens' remaining equipment died completely. In the darkness, Jai Yun felt her way to the cave's familiar back wall where she kept dry firewood. The king watched in silence as Jai Yun arranged the wood. She took out 2 stones she always carried and struck them together, creating sparks. Within minutes, a warm fire lit the cave. The aliens stared at the flames, as if seeing fire for the first time. "How do you survive without power?" one guard projected, his thoughts tinged with fear. Instead of answering, Jai Yun went back out into the rain. She returned with specific mushrooms and plants she knew were safe to eat. She showed them to the queen first, drawing quick pictures to explain which parts were good for food and which for medicine. The king watched as Jai Yun prepared a simple meal using hot stones from the fire. She made tea from pine needles and berries, rich in things that would help them stay strong. The queen accepted the food gratefully, but the king hesitated. "You must eat," his wife projected. "Our technology cannot help us now." Jai Yun demonstrated that the food was safe by eating first. Slowly, the king and his guards followed. Their expressions changed from doubt to surprise as they tasted the forest offerings. As the storm raged outside, Jai Yun taught them basic survival skills. She showed them how to find dry wood even in rain, how to test if water was safe to drink, which plants could help, and which could harm. The king paid special attention to everything she did. All this knowledge, he projected, and not a single machine needed. When the queen shivered from cold, Jai Yun showed them how to warm stones by the fire and wrap them in leaves to create heat packs. She used moss and soft bark to make comfortable places to rest. Through the night, the magnetic storm grew worse. Lightning lit up the sky in strange patterns, and thunder shook the ground. But in the cave, the fire burned steadily, and the group stayed warm and fed. "We have forgotten these simple things," the king projected, watching Jai Yun bank the fire to last through the night. "On our world, we live in cities that float above the ground. We barely touch the soil anymore." The queen smiled at her husband. "Perhaps that is why we are failing. We have lost our connection to what is real." Jai Yun taught them to tend the fire, explaining through gestures how to keep it going without wasting wood. The king himself added fuel to the flames, his first time ever doing such a task. As the storm slowly passed, the aliens began to relax. They learned to move quietly through the forest, to listen to its sounds, to feel its rhythms. The king's initial frustration at their helplessness turned to thoughtful observation. When dawn finally came, their technology slowly flickered back to life. But something had changed. The king looked at their surroundings with new eyes, seeing not a primitive wilderness, but a complex, living system that had sustained life for countless generations. "We have much to learn," he projected, watching Jai Yun extinguish the fire carefully. "Perhaps it is we who are primitive, having forgotten these basic truths of survival." Morning sunlight filtered through the trees as Jai Yun checked the queen's wounds. The healing had progressed far beyond what anyone expected. Even the alien medical team's devices confirmed that the queen was recovering at an extraordinary rate. The king sat nearby, watching Jai Yun work. She mixed different herbs together, creating medicines that worked better than any of their advanced treatments. His silver eyes followed her movements as she drew pictures in the dirt, explaining how each plant worked with the others. "Show me more," he projected into her mind. His earlier disdain had vanished. Where did you learn these things? Jai-yun drew a picture of an old woman teaching a young girl. She added more figures behind them, stretching back in a line. The king understood. This was knowledge passed down through generations. The queen sat up easily now, her strength returning. Watch this, she projected. She picked up some herbs and began mixing them the way Jai-yun had taught her. The king's eyes widened as his wife created a perfect healing paste. You've learned their ways so quickly, he projected. Because they make sense, the queen replied. These plants grow together for a reason. Each one helps the others, like we should be doing. Jai-yun led them to a small stream. She showed them how different plants growing near the water could clean it, making it safe to drink. The king knelt down, touching the plants gently with his purple fingers. On our world, he projected, we create water in factories. We'd forgotten these natural ways. The queen watched as Jai-yun demonstrated how to find edible roots. Perhaps that's why we're seeing more sickness in our cities. We've separated ourselves too much from nature. The queen, now almost fully recovered, joined their lessons. She helped Jai-yun explain things, having learned much during her healing. The king often stood at the edge of the clearing, watching as his people learned these ancient ways. Jai-yun took them on walks through the forest, teaching them to recognize useful plants. She showed them how bark from certain trees could ease pain, how some flowers could help them sleep, how roots could strengthen the body's defenses. The alien healers wrote everything down in their own way, their devices creating detailed maps of each plant's properties. But Jai-yun also taught them to trust their senses, to smell, touch, and really see the plants they studied. Sometimes she drew in the dirt. The old ways tell us things machines cannot. One evening, as they sat studying different healing mushrooms, a storm approached. The alien devices started giving wrong readings in the changing air pressure. But Jai-yun showed them how to read the clouds, how to smell the coming rain, how to feel the changing wind. This is true science, Narel projected, reading nature's own signs. The king joined them more often now, asking questions about how Earth's medicines might help his people. He watched Jai-yun teach his healers to make fire, find clean water, and identify safe plants to eat. Our cities, he projected one day, they're beautiful but sterile. We need this knowledge, this connection to living things. The alien healers learned quickly. Soon they could identify helpful plants on their own, understand how weather affected healing, and make medicines without their machines. They started keeping written records alongside their digital ones, drawing pictures just as Jai-yun did. What if, Narel projected during one lesson, we combined our knowledge? Your natural wisdom with our technology. Jai-yun smiled and drew two hands joining together, then added both plants and stars around them. The healers nodded in understanding. They began experimenting carefully, using alien technology to understand Earth's plants better, while learning to trust their own senses more. Each day brought new discoveries as two very different ways of healing started to merge. The queen often sat with them, adding her own experiences of being healed by Earth's medicines. She showed how her wounds had healed cleaner and stronger than they would have with just alien technology. This is more than medicine, she projected. It's remembering who we are, living beings connected to living worlds. As weeks passed, the alien healers changed. They moved more quietly through the forest, understood its rhythms better, felt more connected to the life around them. Their silver eyes gained a deeper wisdom. On their last day of learning, Jai-yun taught them how to thank the forest for its gifts. She showed them her grandmother's way of harvesting plants, taking only what was needed, leaving enough for the plant to grow back stronger. We will honor these teachings, Narel projected, placing her hand on the earth. Our people need to remember these truths. The king and queen stood nearby as their healers gathered one final time around Jai-yun's fire. The flames reflected in their silver eyes as they shared their new understanding. That true healing came not from machines alone, but from wisdom as old as life itself. That evening, as stars appeared above the trees, two cultures had truly begun to bridge their differences, learning that sometimes the simplest ways were the most powerful, and that wisdom could flow both ways between the stars. Jai Yun stood in the great hall of the Stellar Empire's Central Healing Center, her simple earth clothes standing out among the flowing metallic garments of the aliens. The massive building combined the best of both worlds. Gardens of earth plants grew alongside advanced medical equipment, while streams of pure water flowed through halls filled with healing technology. The Queen, now fully recovered, walked beside Jai Yun as they toured the new facility. "Look," she projected, pointing to young alien healers learning to identify earth plants while using their scanning devices. Two kinds of wisdom working together. Earth had been officially welcomed into the galactic community just weeks ago. Jai Yun still felt amazed by how quickly things had changed since those first days in the forest. Now she served as Earth's first healer diplomat to the stars. "Your simple knowledge has changed us," the king projected, joining them. He wore his formal armor, but now it was decorated with patterns of earth plants. "We had forgotten that progress doesn't always mean leaving the old ways behind." The healing center bustled with activity. Alien patients received treatments that combined advanced technology with Earth's natural remedies. In one room, traditional herbal steam baths worked alongside energy healing devices. In another, earth plants were being studied with tools that could see down to their smallest parts. Jai Yun watched as Neril taught a group of young healers. They learned to feel a plant's energy with their hands while their devices analyzed its chemical makeup. "Both ways are important," Narel projected. "Together, they make us stronger." The Queen had created special gardens where earth plants could grow in alien soil. Scientists had found ways to help them thrive in different gravity and light. The plants adapted, growing stronger, just as the two civilizations grew stronger together. "Tomorrow," the king projected, "the first group of earth healers arrives to study with us." He smiled at Jai Yun. "You will teach them how to blend our ways with theirs." Jai Yun walked through the garden paths, remembering her grandmother's teachings. She had never imagined those simple lessons would help bridge the gap between worlds. Now Earth's traditional healing knowledge was valued across the galaxy. The Queen touched a flowering herb, one that had helped heal her wounds. "Your people understand something we have forgotten," she projected. "That all living things are connected. Our technology works better when we remember this truth." Young alien children ran through the gardens, learning the names of earth plants alongside their own world's medicines. They didn't see any difference between the two ways of healing. To them, it was all one science, one wisdom. Jai Yun showed them how to make simple remedies, while their teachers showed them how to use healing devices. The children learned both ways, understanding that real wisdom came from many sources. "Next month," the Queen projected, "we open healing centers like this on 20 more worlds." She smiled at Jai Yun. "Your knowledge will help heal people across the galaxy." The king added, "And our technology will help preserve and understand Earth's wisdom better than ever before." As evening fell, lights came on in the gardens, soft glows that matched the plants' natural rhythms. Jai Yun sat with the king and queen in a quiet corner, sharing tea made from earth herbs, served in cups that kept it at the perfect temperature. "Sometimes," the king projected, "the most advanced civilization is the one that remembers its roots." He looked out at the healing center where two very different ways of seeing the world had become one. The Queen took Jai Yun's hand. "You taught us that progress isn't just about moving forward. Sometimes it's about remembering what we knew all along." Jai Yun drew in the soil of a garden bed, a simple picture of hands and hearts and stars, just like she had drawn in the forest that first day. But now it wasn't just a hope for the future, it was real. As stars appeared in the alien sky, Jai Yun thought about how far they had all come. From a crashed ship in a forest to this place, where ancient wisdom and advanced science worked as one. She knew her grandmother would have been proud to see Earth's simple healing ways helping people among the stars. The healing center stood as proof that the best way forward was one that honored both the old and the new, the simple and the advanced, the wisdom of Earth and the knowledge of the stars. In bringing these things together, they had all found something greater than either civilization had known alone.